The crystal blue waters of Western Australia's vast shoreline is home to a diverse and thriving ecosystem, one that delivers renowned pristine seafood to the world. But when it comes to economic impact, there's one known jewel on this coastline's crown: Western rock lobster, an industry once worth more than $300 million. After hours at sea, fishermen pack the crayfish into crates, and many end up at this sorting facility in Perth, owned by the largest rock lobster exporter in the world.
Before the pandemic, we were exporting around about, well, over 90% of our product was going into China. And that's simply because they revere the product so much.
But when the pandemic hit, freight constraints meant their revenue went to zero. Add in China's sanctions on Australian rock lobster, and the company was pushed to breaking point.
When China shut down, that's when our market shut down for 2 months. Part of what we've done over the last 2.5 years is make sure that we have a diversified supply chain. So Japan, Taiwan, Korea, Singapore, Hong Kong, we're doing little bits into the Philippines. So we're covering a lot of those Asian markets.
While their revenue is still half it was pre-pandemic, it has allowed them to keep running, a strategy every other fishery in Australia is now looking to take on board. The national peak body representing the Australian seafood industry recently unveiled a strategic plan to future-proof supply and boost exports to some $1.3 billion by 2030.
These lobsters are great.
A plan backed by the federal government.
We're obviously looking to make sure that we're servicing lots of Asian markets and making sure Australian seafood is moving through as many channels as we can, which was one of our learnings through COVID.
But another channel opened up during the pandemic that doesn't involve exports. Despite Australia producing some of the best fish and lobster in the world, majority of it is sent overseas. Around 70% of seafood eaten in the country is in fact not from these waters, but is predominantly imported from Asia. Some suppliers say that the pandemic, though, has caused a shift in attitudes, and consumers are now more conscious of where their fish comes from. Post-pandemic, Australian fishing businesses experienced a boom in demand for locally caught products, and this fish factory now relies on it.
Realistically, the way that the market in Western Australia responded to COVID meant that we had a lot of supply, a lot of demand for the product that we had locally. So we transitioned from a predominantly wholesale business to a more food service business.
Thank you so much. A lot of their revenue now comes from hospitality, hand delivering fresh local fish to fancy restaurants like this. And here in the wine region of Margaret River,
4 oysters, 3 scallops, 2 prawns, 2 bugs, please.
That's exactly what customers want.
Customers are very aware of what fish species they should be eating and what fish species they shouldn't be eating. So, they're very well educated now compared to, maybe 10 years ago.
Whether it's served on a platter for locals or shipped off into containers overseas, the industry is doing everything it can to restart its economic pulse. But with China no longer taking majority of the catch, oversupply in the domestic market has led to a drop in lobster prices to around $25 per kilogram instead of the premium price of around $53 or more. Industry leaders say alternative strategies are still not enough to fill the void left by the Chinese market, leaving the seafood sector at the mercy of the changing tides of diplomatic relations. Danielle, Robertson, CNA, Western Australia.